Dawn, welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday interview sessions. So good to have you on. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. So thankful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Whereabouts in the world are you?
We are currently stationed in Virginia on the east coast of the US. My significant other is a commander in the Coast Guard. And so we move around quite a bit. So this is home for now. But we're East Coasters for the most part. We live up and down the coast between Washington, D.C. And Florida most of the time.
Love that. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a bit better and know a bit more about your story and using that to inspire others. So just take us back a little bit. Take us on the journey of Dawn, and let's understand a little bit about your story.
Oh yeah, so many things. I grew up in New Jersey. I am the middle child and grew up with all of the stereotypical thoughts about what that meant, right? So a lot of people talk about me being, more outspoken, the one who always like speaks her mind, and I also have always had a big heart, right? I've always been able to
Mhm.
empathize with the child that was being bullied, or the child that was left out, the child that didn't get picked first for kickball, and I was always protecting and defending those children at a very young age. At the time, not really realizing why so much as it just felt like the right thing to do. As I grew up, I kind of learned how to channel all of my energy and desire to accomplish great things into sports, and using that as my outlet and my ticket to college. Um, I went to undergrad at Towson University. I got my master's at Johns Hopkins, and I did some work with children that experienced trauma early in my internships of college that moved me into a career. So I did some of that work, and it was through that work that I realized being an empath and having this huge heart and this desire to serve really started to become amplified into what then became the beginning of my career path. Um, I went into the classroom after doing about 3 years of clinical work at Johns Hopkins because I had this desire to be the teacher that these children who had endured trauma really needed to see every day. The person that could show up for them, understand what they were living through, moving through, meet them with a whole heart, and not lower the bar for them, but show
Mhm.
them what they could become. Help them understand that their world existed outside of four square city blocks, and that they had the opportunity to be more and become more, and that there was an adult that cared about them. And so I went into the classroom in Baltimore City Public Schools, which I don't anticipate you will know much of what that means, but in the US, everybody knows what that means. And it's a challenging community. It's a community with a lot of heart, but also a lot of generational trauma.
Mm.
And so that is a close proximity to Johns Hopkins. And so that's how I ended up teaching there. And it was through my teaching experience that I continued to just recognize that every single day you have this opportunity to be part of someone else's success story. You have an
Mhm.
opportunity to show a child that they're there for purpose, right? That they have the
Mm.
opportunity to use their gifts. That they're not bad children. They might be making bad choices, or they might be doing things as a defense mechanism of some sort. But if you can show them how to better communicate, better interact, be less defensive, get out of fight or flight, and really just show up as a kind-hearted, loving, caring, courageous individual, that they could become something that they could be very proud of, and that others would be proud of. And I think that brought me to the work that I do today. I work for a health simulation company that focuses on the power of conversations to affect social, emotional, and physical health. There's a direct correlation between mental health and the way we show up every day. And I
Mhm.
work in the education space and the healthcare space. So, depending on which sector you're talking about, it's this opportunity to build our self efficacy and confidence around difficult conversations so that we can show up and be better humans to other humans.
I love this. Yes, really. There's a lot of language that you use that really speaks to the heart of what I'm all about here at Always Better Than Yesterday. And I just love what you said around not lowering the bar, but showing them what they can become. And I use a phrase called love tough. Like, what is kind of not letting them lower the bar and showing them their potential, what they become? What does that look like? What does that sound like for young people these days?
When I went into the classroom, of course, I had these high, grand hopes of coming into this community and being a different person than perhaps that they had met before.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of feedback from individuals that had been teaching for a long time or working in the community for a long time. And they just said, this child, or this student, they may name the child and just say, they're just not the best reader, right? Or they're
Mm-hmm.
just not really that good at math. But if you just give them half the problems, right? Like just let them do the odd numbers or let them do the even numbers, they'll show you what they understand and you can give them enough of a grade. And I just it didn't sit right, right? It didn't feel right. It was like, well, what if they just get a little extra time, right? What if we just find out how they learn and allow them to learn that way, right? There's no one way to do everything or anything for that matter. And why not just focus on their strengths and understand where they're coming from? So when I think about reading skills, you have this period in time where you're learning to read, and then you're asked to read to learn, right? You transition into this space, and nobody continues to teach you how to read. They just expect now for you to read for information. And the children that get lost in that transition will never really develop that muscle. And then they start to tell themselves, I'm really not good at this. I'm not a good reader. And reader was never easy for me, or it's hard for me. And then they start creating this internal monologue and dialogue that happens, right? About who they are and what they can and can't do in the world. And a lot of everything that we all move through is either love or fear, right? We're operating out of love or fear. And when you think about your internal dialogue, oftentimes it's not even your own voice. And so when I went into this experience of teaching, I said to myself, I'm not lowering the bar. I'm not giving them half the work. I want to meet them where they are, but I also want to show them how to meet the expectations of their grade level, of their peers, of the class. And sometimes that scaffolding took a little bit more time, but it was never about taking half of it away and letting it be good enough. It was about saying to them, well, hey, listen, do you want to just stay for a half hour after school and I'll help you? Or maybe I pair you up with another peer who explains it just a little differently. And all of a sudden you can watch all of like the light bulbs go off and they start to get it. But they also saw that I believed they could do it. And when you give that gift to a child, you have the ability to show them that you believe in them before they believe in themselves. And that self-defeating voice gets quieter. And I think even as adults, we need that sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. And I was listening to a book recently, and there was some research that said that there's a significant correlation between the grade results of kids and the belief that the teachers have in them. Like, it's almost like the belief of the teacher comes first, and then they show up as if they've got, it's like mining for gold, right? They just know that there's gold there, so they do everything that it takes to call it out. How do we translate the belief of the teacher? And you said the word earlier, self-efficacy, which self-efficacy, self-belief, I think it's how do we translate it from the teacher so that it gets passed on to the child or even the adult, whoever needs it?
So I think it's about building that within an individual. And then the benefit of it is the people around them, right? Some of the elevated conversations that you and I may have with the people around us will allow them to start to think about things a little bit differently. And so when I think about the transfer from an adult to a child, kids are listening to what we say as much as they listen to what we don't say. And so we have to be very intentional with our words and our actions in order for the right message to be received. So if a child were to be walking down the hall and I'm standing in the hallway speaking to one of my peer educators, they're hearing those conversations. So we have to be very mindful of what we're discussing and what we're talking about. We need to keep the conversation elevated and positive. And it doesn't mean that we have to be positive all the time, but you have to be very intentional and mindful when the kids are around what you say. And then translating that to the interactions with parents, right? We have the opportunity to partner with the parents to say, I want to know what's working for you at home. And I'm going to share what's working in the classroom. And then let's try to find a way to make this as consistent for your child as possible, because we're partners in this. Especially, I taught elementary school. So, I'm working with 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. we need to be partners in this evolution that is their upbringing and education. I had students for 7.5 hours. The world had them the rest of the time, which includes their parents. And so we have to be partners in all of it. We need to create that firm foundation. And so I think it's a lot about what you are being intentional about, the words you choose and the messages that you're sending, and then just constantly reinforcing that. And that goes to modeling making mistakes, right? That goes all the way to the idea that sometimes it's okay to not be okay, and to model how we process our feelings, and model what we do when we get frustrated or when we feel sad. We have to show children that it's okay to feel all of their feelings, and there's a safe way to do that.
I love that. You say on your website about having influence is not about elevating the self, but about lifting others. Like, how have you taken that heart of lifting others from the school into other areas of your ventures that this life has taken you on?
So I believe that we should lead from any seat, right? Who you are is how you lead. So the way I choose to show up every day, my self-leadership, my commitment to educating myself, to surrounding myself with good people, is something that I do very intentionally, actively, self-development, constantly learning from others. So I think I model the power of leadership and the power of intentional living, mindset work. And I try to do that with everyone I encounter, irrespective of whether they work with me, for me, or in, in a surrounding space, or if they're in a motivated Facebook group, which is where we connected. It's an opportunity with every interaction, every conversation, every relationship, is to display that level of compassion, leading with empathy. Get curious, learn about people, learn about other experiences, acknowledge that your life experience may be different than someone else, but you can meet them with empathy and hold space for them while they share their experience. And through doing all of that, I hope that I am, creating a ripple effect and bringing about a feeling of safety and security to show up as your full self in the spaces that we co-occupy and in the communities that I serve.
I love that. You said the word intention. You said the word mindset. It's almost starting off your impact model. Talk to me about impact.
Yeah, so I believe in so many core functions of impact, but one of the things that I feel very strongly about is our presence and the way we choose to show up. And I do believe that's a choice. I believe that you have an opportunity to reframe things. If you hear a negative thought come in, you have the opportunity to flip it. And the way in which you show up and the values that you hold, you need to honor those, and you need to live them and walk them. It should never be a question for another person that engages with you, that you are showing up in your values. And if at any moment you feel your values are compromised, or you're not honoring yourself, right? If you're choosing to do something that I refer to the path of least resistance sometimes, right? When we're tired, we may take the path of least resistance in a conflict or a difficult conversation. You still have the opportunity to redo that. You have the opportunity to go back to that person and say, hey, listen, I don't think I handled that very well. This is what's coming up for me. This is how I was feeling. I'd love to understand from you how you experienced our conversation, because I would rather us find a way to do that differently next time. And I think there is a way, right? So even just holding your line of integrity by being able to admit when you don't do it right? When you are able to just say, you know what, I didn't show up as my best self in that conversation, and I'd really like the opportunity and ask you for the opportunity to do that differently.
What do you think stops us doing that?
Pride, shame, a little bit of ego, a whole lot of ego for some people.
What helps?
I think the willingness to want to be better, the willingness to admit that I'm always learning, always growing, the commitment to that. And I think just the reminders. I surround myself with a ton of reminders. If I were to give you a quick 360 scan of my office, you would see there's visual cues all around me. And those are gentle reminders. If I'm on a conference call and I glance over and I see something that says, who we are is how we lead. I have something on my screensaver over here that says, I'm not here to get it to be right. I'm here to get it right. I have a wall of books that I can see from my seat, seat of the soul, driven, mindset. The words are everywhere around me. Be kind, be compassionate, all of it reminds me of the type of person I want to show up as every day. And I think those gentle reminders can be everywhere around you, and they can be in the people that you are inspired to connect with. So I think placing those things in such a place that you can see them regularly are beautiful, gentle reminders. And then I would say for those of my peers, my friends that have small children, the kindness that you see a child exhibit can remind you of how simple things can be if you allow them to be. And I think they can also, be a good, gentle reminder, because you want them to learn their manners, and you want them to learn to be gracious and say thank you and be patient. There was a beautiful book I read many years ago called Everything I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And it's true. There's so many things that adults need to be reminded of, learned a long time ago, that would just allow us to lead with our hearts.
What are some of those things?
Patience, kindness, sharing, compassion, letting somebody cut you in line. I have a story, a short story, but recently, like with the beginning of the pandemic, I had first ventured out to the grocery store, and there was a woman standing in line, and we're standing 6 feet apart, and we all have our masks on, and you could just see the anxiety coming off of her. She's fidgeting, she's pacing, she's just rocking back and forth in her space. And she's just holding this pack of muffins. And you could tell she just needed to get out of there, right? She wasn't comfortable. And it was a Saturday morning. And I just said, would you like to go in front of me? And she's like, oh, I couldn't. My husband's in the car waiting for me. And I don't know. And she went on. And I said, it's okay if you want to go in front of me. And I went home that day, not only because I had the time to allow her to have the grace and space to do that. I know that she needed it. I observed it in her behavior, but I also went home that day and I ordered a mask that says, be kind. So right on the actual mask, it says, be kind. And I said to myself, if people can't see my facial expression and how genuine I am, if my eyes don't light up enough to tell them that I mean what I say, maybe this message is just an extra message that they can receive while I'm in the stores walking around, in an environment where people are a little bit uncomfortable right now and a little bit uncertain, and there's a little bit more fear. And so maybe that's just a little gentle message that allows people to know I genuinely mean it when I say that it's okay to walk in front of me. It's okay for me to wait 5 more minutes. It's okay that you're taking a little bit to stock the shelf or whatever it is. I think we just need to give each other those reminders too.
You talked about leading ourselves. What are some of the things that really help you?
I check in with myself pretty frequently throughout the day. I ask myself a few questions at the beginning of the day. I revisit those throughout the day. And some days I just need to actually quiet my mind. I do meditate at least once a day, but sometimes I need to do it more frequently. I like to I use the term reframe a lot because I catch myself with certain internal dialogues or processes that I don't find productive or helpful. So in the beginning of the day, I may say, what are the top 3 things that I need to get done today? Like kind of my non-negotiables. There's always more, but what are the things that need to get accomplished today? I check in on my team every morning to say good morning, to ask if they need anything, to just kind of get a pulse on how they're feeling. And then I often ask myself in certain moments, what am I meant to learn in this moment? What is this meant to teach me? Whether that's an encounter with an individual that might be a little more challenging, or, getting a project last minute that I wasn't anticipating, or being crunched for time with completing something that I know I probably could have started earlier, but today is the day and I still have to finish it. So spending time in the negative energy doesn't serve me. So if I feel that coming on, I also just kind of check back in and decide what's the next highest level feeling I can select, and how can I get there as quickly as possible.
I love that. What connects you and I, looking at your website, far beyond the heart and the mind that you shared today, is that you talk about this sense of for purpose. I think it's really common terms of for profit, non-profit. But I really like the phrase for purpose. What is some of the things that you're showing up and you're doing for purpose at the moment?
Yeah, so I do a lot of philanthropic work, and I work with a few different charities. I do believe that a lot of the work that's being done in the world is meant to serve a particular cause or a community. I often allow myself to be guided towards those moments and those
Mm-hmm.
experiences. I do love the ones that are kind of tied to an experience of some sort. So the shirt that I have on is from the Ulman Cancer Fund. They help support young adults that have been touched by cancer. And so whether or not they moved through a personal experience or they had a family member or a loss of a loved one, the idea being is that no one fights alone. And they did an event where we actually got a group together and we ran from Baltimore, Maryland to Key West, Florida for the course of 7 days, which is about 1,500 miles. So don't worry, we didn't run every single mile, but we had a team of 33 people. I ran about 80 miles in 7 days. But the event itself brought together a group of people that prayed together every morning, that set their intentions together every morning, that held space for each other in moments that were difficult when they shared their stories. And it was the first time that I had a true awareness that I could hold space for someone while they shared their story, and I couldn't take the pain away. I could just be present and be fully there in the moment with them. And that was a really challenging experience for me because I'm a fixer. I like to take the pain away for people. I like to ease their pain, make things easier for them in some capacity. I like to help them in such a way that in that moment I had to learn that the only thing that I could do was to be. And that was a really beautiful gift for me. I had gone to the experience to do the fundraising and to do the charitable part, but the beautiful gift of the friendships that came from that and the experience of just learning how to hold space and be in a place where somebody was sharing some difficult things, but also just acknowledging that everyone has their own journey to live, and the people that they encounter throughout that journey are meant to be there to live through that moment with them. And we all created memories together, which was beautiful. And so I really appreciate and love that charity. I've done some other work with them, feel very connected to that work. And then I also do some work in terms of like fundraising for like local community organizations and women's led organizations. I do really feel passionate about elevating the female women's voice and helping them to feel empowered, to understand that they deserve the seat at the table, and really focusing on what inclusion looks like, not only to be invited, but to feel welcome and valued and seen and heard once you're sitting there.
Why?
I think it was something that I worked really hard to do for myself early in my career. And I had some very beautiful, very helpful, thoughtful mentors, both male and female, who really became sponsors for me. So when I think about sponsorship versus mentorship,
Yep.
The sponsor for me is someone who will advocate for you when you're not in the room. Right. And so they're the person who volunteers or recommends you for an opportunity when you're not there to raise your hand. Right. And so I love the idea of having people in my life that have done that. And I've built my personal advisory board, later in my career with someone who can guide me financially, spiritually, through leadership challenges, different areas of my life that I want to improve. I tap into those individuals and I ask for their support and guidance and, share some ideas with them. But I think giving back and allowing that same love and support to be given to someone earlier in their career is very meaningful to me. And so as a way of giving back for those that gave to me and continue to support me, I do make time to do that as well.
I love that. What do our listeners really need to hear from you today?
Oh, that's such a big question. I think everyone has an opportunity to look at the world around them, look at the places that they are, the people that they are engaged with, and just make the next right decision to be a better person, to be a better human, to be a little bit more kind, a little bit more compassionate, help support another individual, to learn their stories, to truly hear them and understand that there's going to be a part of you that can't truly ever be in their shoes. But if you can actively listen, reflectively listen, and really take the time to ask questions and be thoughtful in those questions, it'll give you a greater perspective. And I hope that it would allow you to meet the next person with just a little bit more compassion and a little bit more kindness, because we're all moving through something, right? And some people are better at hiding it than others. But there isn't one person that I've met that doesn't need to be met with kindness and compassion. Sometimes it's a little harder to see the good in some people, but there is good in everyone. And I invite everyone to try to think about that when they are engaging with others. Because right now we need to come together and we need to see that we are far more the same than we are different. And I would just love to find more people doing more good in the world so we can spotlight that and elevate that conversation.
I love that. I normally ask people, what does it mean to be always better than yesterday? But I think you've pretty much just covered that in your last answer. Is there anything else you would add to that?
I would just say that we have the opportunity to wake up today, tomorrow, and the next day, and just constantly be evolving and growing. And don't judge yourself with the information you have today on the things that you've done in the past. Just be grateful for the information you're learning and use that information to show up differently tomorrow. I think a lot of us get stuck in this should have place, right? It's just as dangerous as the when then, right? This idea that when I get to this place, I'll be happy, or when I get this accomplishment, or I get this pay raise, or I get this promotion, I will infinitely become a better person, or a happier person, or a more stable person, whatever you're looking for. And all the while, you're exactly where you're meant to be. And you're growing through that moment. And so I would say reserving judgment of yourself and the lessons you had to learn along the way, but also find a way to be happy and be present now. And it's okay to desire more, to seek greater things, but I think we don't want to lose sight of the gratitude we have for today.
Amen. How do people connect with you? How do they join you on your journey? How can they connect?
Yeah, so most of my social media is actually pretty easy to find. My website is Dawn Inspires. My Instagram is Dawn Inspires 44, and that was my soccer number, and I think someone took Dawn Inspires, so I had to add a number on it. And then my LinkedIn is just my full name, Dawn Marie Bornheimer, and I think my Facebook is as well. I am my whole self everywhere that I show up. But I would say Instagram is a little bit more fun, a little bit more photo oriented. LinkedIn is a little bit more leadership focused and mentorship and mental health. But it is me in all places.
Curious about your soccer number. Oh, carry on. Talk about your book, and then I want to know about soccer.
I was just going to say my books are available on Amazon, and they're also available on my website. I did put together an anthology last year called The Strength of Our Anchors. And it's a compilation of 9 women sharing their stories of overcoming. And those are just powerful stories of very beautiful women who have been willing to be vulnerable in order to be a story that can help save another person in their journey and let them know that they're not alone. And so that project was very near and dear to my heart. And we released that book last year. And so I would just love to have a few more people benefit from those beautiful stories.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I was curious about the soccer. So you were a soccer player?
I was, yes. Not anymore, but I was. It feels like many moons ago, but yes, I played soccer earlier in middle school, high school, and then a little bit in college. And then I played some club for a little bit.
That's amazing. Number 44.
I don't really remember there being a great story. I just remember like choosing it and hanging on to it. Um, so it's always been kind of when I have to throw a number on the end of something, I always seem to still use it.
I like it. I like it. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and spend it with us, the We Are Always Better Than Yesterday community. And I just love for you to leave us with a final thought from your good self.
I guess my final thought would be, I hope that you find a way to leave the world a better place than how you found it. I think that you can leave your little sprinkles and sparkle dust and kindness everywhere that you go. And I hope that the people that have had the beautiful opportunity to know me will have those same thoughtful and kind-hearted memories of me at the time in which I'm no longer here to speak for myself. So I think we just have that beautiful opportunity. So I would invite everyone to think about how you could be a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit kinder, and more compassionate each and every day.
I love that. I love your heart, love your mind, and I'm grateful for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Let's talk again soon.
100%.